Above her head, the canopy of an old oak tree, its leaves winnowing sunlight. It's been weeks since the late buds opened. Now the blooms sway in the breeze, yellow pendants rimmed with white petals. A branch bobs lazily, and Maddie notes a spider weaving its house of silk. It dangles off a dew-beaded thread and lands at the center of the web with the elegance of a tightrope walker. The arachnid weaves a web of spirals, the better to capture prey. Maddie Bouchard watches the spider rest from her busy labor and thinks, there are two of us searching for food this morning, and waiting is half the gift. Maddie stands at the margin of a hayfield near an old hunting blind her father built. To her right, a dense thicket of rhododendron extends its leaves like palms to the sun. She steps light-footed around a sculpture peeking out from the overgrowth. A bronze leprechaun, only 3 feet tall, its left eye captured in a wink. Her father, Antoine Girard, commissioned it from a local man and set it here to guard this field. Maddie empties her mind, listening to the slow exhalation of leaves, the susurrating murmur of hay as it bends in an updraft, and the percussion of insects droning their bass tones. If only she could translate this dawn chorus into notes, but there's no way to coax such opulence from the piano. On the horizon, no rain, and no cross breeze to carry her scent to prey. Not that a pheasant cares. Maddie smiles as her target comes into view. The bird will add substance to the pot. The smile fades as she thinks of her father and what he'd say about 4 years of uncut hay. He'd rage over the theft of farm equipment and the loss of his thoroughbred horses to Nazi thugs. She can save the orchards, but the hayfields will have to wait till the war ends. If she did try to harvest, the soldier who lives at the villa would only steal it away. No need to think of that now. Instead, the flare of memory. Her 7-year-old self, walking through the hayfields, weaving elaborate tunnels through the tall grass. Back then, she imagined these footpaths of honeyed light were the corridors of heaven. Maddie looks up now, wondering if God still resides here, or has he deserted the French for letting the aggressors in? She won't dwell on the unanswerable. The lens of her attention narrows on the small birds scurrying through layers of unshorn hay. Maddie pulls an arrow from the quiver, ruffles the fletching, and fits the end into the nock. She holds the pivot point with one hand, pulls the bowstring back with the other, anchors the taut line near her dominant eye, and waits. When the hen stills, Maddie cants the bow to the left and sights the middle of the target. With her stance firm and breath empty, she lets the arrow find its mark. That makes her grin. It's always a relief when she gets one that easily. On the way to the pond, she passes a long row of lilacs, their aroma percolating through her blood like a second sip of wine. There are days when the world is nothing but beauty. She'll hold on to that thought and refuse everything else. Maddie clips a handful of the flowers to put in a vase, though the thought of walking through her own front door sends a cascade of dread up her spine. She's never sure what mood the Nazi, Sergeant Karl Weber, will be in. Too often he slams through the house in a vile temper. No, it's better to stay in the forest and fields, to imagine that there are 2 worlds, and she can move freely in this one. The peace of country life and its myriad tasks, that's all she wants. When Antoine was alive, he spent every waking hour outdoors. He was an artist, the villa, his living canvas. He'd plant, prune, and coax, merging the wild with the domestic. She can almost hear him complaining about the need to prune the lilacs before they encroach on the grape arbor. She'll need to come back after the blooms fall to get it done. Deeper into the forest, she checks the snare, finds a rabbit, and bends to free its leg. A butterfly drifts past her eye, circles back to land in a bloom of echinacea. Maddie stands to get a better view. This beauty is a pale lavender with the ivory markings of a porcelain vase. It hovers over her outstretched palm and dips a little. Maddie grins. Sorry, no nectar here. A memory surfaces. Her father standing in a field of wildflowers. Oh, yes, how could she have forgotten what he said? The butterfly will wink at you, little darling, when it gets that close to your eye. Watch it now. You'll see. He loved to observe her young mind work out the puzzle of possibilities. Can a butterfly wink? And who would dare tell a child that it can't? Eyes focused, Maddie takes a sip from her flask. Antoine also warned her that she must protect the villa if another war came calling. Since his passing, she's been poring over horticulture books and farm journals. Antoine detailed drawings of each section of the estate, the obligation to orchard, pasture, arbor, field, riverside management, and more. He could have taught botany at the university, but he chose to devote himself to the only thing that mattered, the stewardship of the vast estate that is Villa Gerard. Now, Maddie knows firsthand what his life was like, chopping, pruning, and wrangling with stubborn roots and weeds. She rubs her chapped hands together, closes her eyes, and listens. In the forest, away from the uniforms, Eden proceeds with its daily tasks. Spring, the riot of color, the mad courtship of birds calling in the leaves. This is what matters. Her return to the villa might have been the only good to come of the war. The wide boundary of the estate has provided a sanctuary from the chaos. Soldiers haven't climbed the high wall, leaving her free to roam and pretend the world is otherwise, especially now. And something else has shifted for Maddie. The more she's forced to live off the land, the more its enticements tug at her spirit. The years of study and building a career in the city are a distant dream that can't quite match the gravitational pull of all this beauty. Home, and always waiting for her. Easy enough to put aside while her father lived. She thought only of becoming a concert pianist, and Antoine supported that notion. But there will be no concerts now, not until the occupiers leave and her people get their country back. Only then will she perform in public. An hour later, Maddie emerges from the forest at the edge of the villa and stops at the tree line to listen. Closing her eyes, she hears the flutter of birds in the trees. The right kind of noise, she thinks. No shouting in the courtyard or troublemakers in the lane. The scene before her seems like a dream, a fantasy that Antoine curated long ago. She passes a stately row of roses backed by a wax-leaf privet hedge that defines the outer perimeter of the yard. Under her feet, a stone path bordered on either side by a dozen pear trees, their yellow petals carpeting the ground. 2 plum trees stand sentinel at the end of the little avenue of trees, giving way to a stone terrace and another circle of hydrangeas, with willows hovering over them for shade. She remembers the early years, her parents at the wrought iron table, drinking wine and talking into the night. But no one sits here now. Leaving her catch in the barn, Maddie walks to the back door to get an apron. As she reaches for the latch, fear rises to her throat and she recoils. Her home has become a minefield of uncertainty with Sergeant Weber in residence. She can almost feel his presence on the other side of the door. The man exudes menace, even when he's smiling, and something primitive in her brain has recognized the threat. From the day he arrived, she noticed her nerves fraying. Now just looking at him shuts her voice down. Better to remain silent, to bow her head and let him think she has nothing to say. As an antidote to anxiety, she imagines Jean beside her and decides to write a letter, even though she doesn't know where to send it. This video chapter, titled Archer, is from the novel Myth of the Fireflies by Cara Santorelli and read by Susan Saandholland. Myth of the Fireflies and its sequel, The Villa Gerard, may be found on Amazon. All rights reserved.